another episode of Zone Coverage. We are coming to you after the first week of the NFL season. If you want more Dash Sports coverage as the sports season starts to kick off, remember to follow Dash Sports TV on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and Twitter. We've got some Pac-12 shows. We've got some other sports covered. Follow Dash Sports on YouTube for all those shows as well as we really gear up into these football seasons. But we are specifically talking about the first week of the NFL season, which is almost over. We've got one more game that we're going to get to in a bit. But first, I have to do a little housekeeping, so to say. On our episode last week, Ryan and we made not bets or wagers, so to speak, but we had 3 areas in which we disagreed on that I wrote down. Do you remember the 3, Ryan?
I remember one in particular that I definitely want to address.
Which is what?
Is Tua Tagovailoa's game against the Patriots yesterday. I said he wasn't going to get anything above 200 yards passing, and wouldn't you know, he got 202 yards.
Exactly.
So I don't care about those 2 yards. I still will give myself the W on that because 2 yards is just too
No,
yards.
you said
Nope.
You said he wasn't going to hit 200, and he did.
If I made that bet on what was it, DraftKings or whatever it was that said the over under was like 211, if I would have made the under on it, I would have still won. So you know what? I'll take a half point.
No, you didn't. I would have given you those. You didn't want them. You said 200. He went over barely last drive. That's for me. And then the other one, you said Buffalo was going to beat Pittsburgh by 14 points. We won't talk about that in whole because we'll get to that later, but obviously they did not. And then I said Stafford to get the most fantasy points. He didn't. He was 1/2 yard away from getting another touchdown, but there's some really good weeks. You said Lamar Jackson is still out to play, but we'll see. If Stafford gets more than Lamar, then I'll take a moral victory on that. But those were our bets, so to speak. You can catch more of those on Thursday when we preview week 2 of the NFL season. But we're going to get right into some takeaways from week 1. A lot of football going on, 15 games so far, going back to the Buccaneers and the Cowboys, starting it off on Thursday. But I'll let you go with your first takeaway from the action.
Well, first takeaway I got from this weekend, it was great to see the NFL back in full force. Tons of fans in the stands cheering all these teams on. Had some great games. One of the games that I was most looking forward to was Chiefs versus Browns. Browns were ahead. They were ahead for quite a while. They were up 22-10, I believe. And, of course, you cannot take down the Chiefs kingdom as easy as that, especially on the road in Kansas City. So my biggest takeaway for the Chiefs really is it's not really anything new, but the Chiefs are always going to be in the game. They're always going to be in the game. Unless they're playing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the Super Bowl, they will always be in the game. I always recall back to the AFC divisional round against the Texans a few years back where they had an absolute pitiful first quarter, first half, ended up coming back and beating Deshaun Watson at home there. I mean, the Chiefs are always in the game. They were in the game against the 49ers in the Super Bowl. They will always be in the game. That is kind of the takeaway I have with the Chiefs. And it's really tough to see that the Browns couldn't get it done. It looked like Baker was trying to get a nice final drive in, and then just an off-balance throw that got intercepted on the final drive, which you could tell Baker is frustrated that he still cannot take down this Chiefs team. But I'm still going to keep my eye on it because chances are we might see them again in the playoffs. But this was a great taste from both of these teams in week 1. And these Chiefs will always be, they're going to put you on your toes every week.
Yeah, and like you said, that's nothing new. Obviously, they've showed it time and time again that, they are, one of the best teams. It doesn't matter what the deficit is, as long as there's time on the clock, they're able to come back. But, I was impressed by the Chiefs. I think, the biggest thing obviously was their offensive line, and they've got 3 starters that have never played a single snap before, including a rookie and Creed Humphrey at center, a rookie right guard Trey Smith, and then Lucas Niang at right tackle, who was I believe he's a second-year player, second or third. And the fact that they played really well, only 2 sacks given up to a Browns pass rush that is improved and looks pretty good. Obviously, Myles Garrett got some pressures, and when Patrick Mahomes can do some of the plays that he can do, it makes it a little bit harder to bring him down. But yeah, I mean the Chiefs. The fact that the last time we saw them was, the Super Bowl when they looked the worst that they've ever looked with Patrick Mahomes. It's a welcome sight to see them playing really well, coming from behind. Tyreek Hill had almost 200 yards receiving, which I didn't even realize, and I watched that whole game. He had that one big chunk, but he was just making plays. The Chiefs, are still the class of the NFL. My first takeaway comes from the first game, and it's that the Cowboys' offense is really good, and Dak Prescott is really good. Obviously, that doesn't mean that I think the Cowboys are a really good team. The defense certainly has some warts, but Dak threw for over 400 yards, 403 yards against a Buccaneers defense that you could argue was the best defense in the league last year. You can argue it's the best defense again, and he looked incredible coming off that ankle injury, and then even some shoulder stuff in preseason, and then Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb both look like just elite wide receivers. That's going to be a fun offense to watch. Didn't look great, but I think the Tampa Bay run defense is really good. So we'll see how that looks. But I think that Cowboys offense is everything that the Cowboys are always overhyped.
Yes, they are.
But right now, that offense looks like it's going to live up to that hype.
That's the biggest con I have with the offense that you just said there, and that's Zeke. Going against the Tampa Bay defense, there's obviously not much that he really could do, but they didn't put the ball in his hands an awful lot. He was tackled in the backfield quite a bit. So, why keep running the ball when it's not working? I understand that. But they got goal line plays, inside the red zone plays, inside the 5-yard line plays that they're just not giving Zeke the ball. And Zeke just doesn't look like the same Zeke that we once saw. And that's the biggest con I have with the Cowboys offense is that, sure, Amari Cooper is always going to be a very, solid option at receiver. He absolutely hooked me up on fantasy this weekend. But CeeDee Lamb will also have probably an improving season this year. His sophomore year, sure. We saw what happens with receivers like DK Metcalf, Terry McLaurin. CeeDee Lamb is right there, ready to follow the trend. I do not disagree on the Cowboys passing offense, but you can't really win shootouts every single week because that's what the Cowboys were doing last season. Then Dak got hurt, and then they couldn't really go anywhere from there. So they just got to improve the defensive side some more. Kellen Moore is doing a great job as offensive coordinator. Boise State alum. I have to shout him out at least a little bit. But we'll see where the Cowboys can go. They did put up a valiant effort against the Bucs.
Yeah, certainly that defense is going to need to improve for the team to do anything. And the thing to watch will be Zeke going forward. Was this just because the Tampa Bay run defense is that good, or are there legitimate concerns with Ezekiel Elliott? And we're going to see more Tony Pollard and some of that going forward. But Dak and those receivers are going to be gold for fantasy. They're going to be putting up insane numbers regardless of who they go against. But there's still a lot of questions surrounding them as a legitimate team. So we'll have to, obviously get more of those answers as the weeks go on.
Yeah, and one of my other takeaways I got from the weekends was, I wouldn't say a tremendous shocker, but at least a shock to me in terms of the scoreboard at the end of the day. What's going on with the Packers?
Oh, that has to be a shock.
3
that score. Team. Oh God, yeah.
38-3 against the Saints team. That the Saints, I will be technical. They were not at home. They were in Jacksonville.
Yeah, they've had some tough relocation with all the hurricane stuff.
Going up against a Saints team that was not playing at home, that has a new quarterback taking on the load of their offense, Taysom Hill didn't really even touch the ball all that much. This was all Jameis for the most part and the Saints defense. But second biggest takeaway I got is the Packers are just not ready as a team. I mean, I said this before the season started. Sure, you got Aaron Rodgers to crawl on back to Green Bay. I knew he was not going to be 100% morale-wise going back to Green Bay. And Devontae Adams doesn't want to be in Green Bay if Aaron Rodgers isn't there. So there is just not a tremendous amount of chemistry with this football team. They go up against a Saints team that they should have easily beat. And I'm not saying they should have blown them out of the water, but this should have been at least, 6-7 point victory for the Packers. I mean, they went to the NFC Championship last year.
They were favored by 4 points, so they certainly should have.
The Packers are not ready to go out there and face premier football teams. I mean, thank God they're in the NFC North, which I'll actually get into a little bit later, and I know you will as well. But thank God they're in the NFC North, so they don't have too much competition within their division. But if you can't beat a Saints team that just retired one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, who was on his down end, if you can't take down a Saints team that has Jameis Winston at quarterback, who's coming off of his last starting season where he had 30 interceptions. Not talking down on Jameis, he had a great game. But if you can't take down this Saints team, what's to say you can win a Super Bowl, Aaron? You should have been on a different team by now. Why are you back in Green Bay doing this? Because it's obvious you just don't have the same flair you used to have.
Yeah, I think, once Aaron Rodgers came back, I think that people thought, all right, he's obviously unhappy, but he's going to come back and he's going to play. And he might not be the exact same player he was last year, but he's going to be solid. But I think we are underrating Aaron Rodgers' pettiness because I don't think he gives a shit about how well the Packers do in terms, he doesn't want to go out there and not score a touchdown and, throw a bunch of picks and stuff. But I don't think he cares how the team is and if they're set up for the future or whatever. I really don't think, I think he's ready to move on and this is a formality. So, people thought it was going to turn into a spite season, kind of like last year where he was playing, so good that he, because he was trying to spite them. But I think it's turning into the opposite where he's just kind of I think he even said he wasn't embarrassed with the game. He was just, I don't know. It's a weird thing. This could be a week one blip. Obviously, we see some weird results in the start of the season, and then teams turn it around. But if there's more of this, it's going to be really concerning. Obviously, the NFC North is incredibly winnable, so they could do more of this and still end up winning that division. But yeah, it was really weird to see. Just a loss would have been okay, I understand, but it's a little concerning. But that type of loss was not good.
No, I mean, he's on, I believe it was a drive to finish out the first half to try to get some points up on the board, and it turns into nothing. Or he had an interception in the red zone, and and everything that is just non-Aaron Rodgers happened. And against the Saints team that it should not have happened with. And
I think the way that his hair pokes out the back of his helmet looks gross.
Yeah, that's kind of weird, isn't it?
Looks like
I noticed that same thing.
Looks he looks like somebody that's bald and thinning and skeleton hair. I don't know, weird. But speaking of,
I don't want to attack the guy personally here.
Just get a haircut. Your hair shouldn't be coming out the bottom of your helmet like that unless it's TJ Hawkinson level flow. But speaking of quarterbacks that maybe did a little bit better, all of which did better than Aaron Rodgers, the rookie class is loaded, is really showing out. All five rookie quarterbacks, first round rookie quarterbacks, let me be more specific, scored touchdowns on Sunday. All of them scored more fantasy points than Aaron Rodgers, and Trey Lance and Justin Fields didn't even start the game for their respective teams and didn't even play that much. I think Fields and Lance both, they got in a little bit in some packages, which I think we'll see a lot more of going forward, but they didn't play all that much. And then Lawrence, looked iffy with some interceptions. Zach Wilson didn't look great, but the Jets didn't look great, but Zach Wilson looked pretty good. for doing what he did with a line that couldn't block. And then Mac Jones took the loss, but looked pretty in control of that Patriots offense. But I mean, just the fact that we talked about this before, but none of them look terrible, which is weird because we're used to. I mean, just the last. I mean, 2018 there was 5 quarterbacks drafted in the first round, and Rosen is who knows where. I think he's on the. I can't even remember
I think he was on a team in the preseason, then he got cut.
No, he's still on a team. Let me find it.
It's still on a team?
He is. It's like he's on the Falcons. It's like their 3rd string quarterback.
Can't even be the 2nd string. Jeez.
And Sam Darnold is already moved on. I mean, so that's only a few years, and we've already seen some of them kind of falter. And the fact that all these guys look pretty good in quarterbacks of the future for now is impressive. Throw in the first 3 rookie wide receivers all scored touchdowns: Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, and then just a lot of good play elsewhere. I'm not going to go through everybody, but I mean, when the receivers and the quarterbacks look good in the class, that has a chance to make this an absolutely insane class. Obviously, ETN's out for the year. Najee Harris didn't look great with that Steelers offense, but if those premier positions can look really good, then this could go down as an insane draft class.
Yeah, I mean, I'll put Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, and Mac Jones to the side for right now because they all started, they all scored, and other than Trevor Lawrence, there weren't many, interceptions, turnovers, or negatives to really talk about. But in terms of Trey Lance and Justin Fields, it really intrigued me in terms of how their respective offenses treated them on Sunday. I mean, San Fran had an absolute. I'll get into that game a little bit. But San Fran had a great game to start out. They were absolutely crushing the Lions offensively, defensively. And then Trey Lance comes out. He throws one pass that game, 5-yard pass, touchdown. There you go. You got your first touchdown of your career. Congratulations. We really fought for you to get that. Then we got Justin Fields, who's thrown 2 passes, 2 completions for 10 yards. Didn't get a passing touchdown, but he did get a rush for 3 yards in the red zone for a touchdown. So both quarterbacks that everybody was, on a toss-up with, when are they going to finally start? Is Trey Lance going to start when they play the Bears, or is Justin Fields going to start when they play the Niners? Are they going to start week 3, week 7, week 17? When are they going to start? Week 1, both of them score their first touchdowns of their careers, and more importantly, Andy Dalton doesn't even get a touchdown yesterday. And Jimmy G, of course, did. He's a little bit more well-versed with the offense than Andy Dalton is with his. But point being is it almost feels a little political in terms of we got these first-round quarterbacks that, the Bears traded up for him. The Niners picked him 3rd overall.
Niners traded up for him, too.
Or the Niners did trade up.
Before the draft,
right.
But yeah.
They both traded up to get these quarterbacks in the first round. This is going to be the future. Jimmy G's on the hot seat. Andy Dalton's a bridge quarterback, all this stuff. But they get their first touchdown in week 1, and you have to sit there and say, well, why isn't Justin Fields starting? Why isn't Trey Lance starting? It almost feels like they're trying to do – this is just my interpretation of it, but it feels like they're trying to get almost a little bit of a tug-of-war going on. Well, Justin Fields got his touchdown. He threw 2 passes, not just 1. Oh, well, and he also got a rushing touchdown. Trey Lance to do that. Oh, well, Trey Lance – got his touchdown off of 1 throw, so he's got a – it almost feels a little political to me in terms of just like, who's going to start first? What's going to happen this? What's going to happen that? I mean, is this – I'm going to hype it up to this degree just because it's entertaining for me, but before San Fran plays Chicago, is this really going to be who's going to start? What's going to happen? What's going to go on? I mean, that was the thing that stood out to me the most in terms of the rookie quarterbacks, but I'll get into that Lions-Niners game in a little bit. But, the rookie class, all these quarterbacks, there's not one that sticks out as a bad quarterback by any means.
No, not at all.
Is in a dumpster fire of a team to begin with, so you can't really downplay the guy too much. But it's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, the Jags and the Jets both look like the teams that were deservedly picking at 1st and 2nd overall. I mean, that was not a shock that those teams looked really bad. But, yeah, a lot of promise. I think we'll see really solid rookie years out of all of them. It could create an interesting Rookie of the Year debate down the stretch. But we'll have to see. But I mean, just in terms of first impressions and legitimate regular season action, this rookie class, not just the quarterbacks, but especially the quarterbacks, is producing.
Yeah, I mean, another takeaway I want to get to real quick here is talk about my Bills that did not really show up to play as I anticipated them to, and at home, out of all places,
Yeah,
performance like that. I mean, Bills Mafia is finally in. They want to call it Highmark Stadium. I'm going to call it Ralph Wilson till the day I die. But Ralph Wilson Stadium, they all crowd in, ready to see the Bills take on the Steelers. Just came off of a fantastic, historic season for that franchise. And they looked a little disjointed. And it doesn't mean, Josh Allen came out and said it really well. It's just week 1. There's 16 other games to play. We're still a playoff team. Sure, the Steelers came out and they still will have – they're going to have the steel curtain for who knows how long. I mean, throughout generations of Steelers players, they will always have a steel curtain to go off of. That defense will always be great. Now, the Bills, my takeaway for them is they got hit with a little bit of a reality check. You are not unbeatable. You are not indestructible. You are not the Kansas City Chiefs, so to speak. You have a quarterback that just got a massive contract. You have an insane connection between him and Stephon Diggs. You have a defense that is still – somewhat electric, but not as good as it was a few years back. You still got Tre'Davious White out there. You still got all of these great players on your team, fantastic coaching staff. You went up against a veteran and Super Bowl winning coach, Mike Tomlin. You went up against Big Ben, who I don't know if Big Ben knew he was there. He looked like he was just kind of playing. But that Steelers defense, that Steelers special teams as well, who got 7 points on them. I mean, they got hit with a little bit of a reality check at home too. So I know that this is a gut punch for them, but they are not unbeatable. They thought they had the Cardinals game in the bag last year until the Hail Murray happened. You know what I mean? So things can happen. The NFL is a great league where every single week matters. You can't go 17-0, but you want to shoot for it. But 0-1 to start it out. And the Dolphins are now leading the AFC East. They don't want that to happen. They just won the division for the first time in 2 decades. They want to get right back in there, but this is a little bit of a reality check for them.
Yeah, and I mean, the way I look at this is I think it says a lot more about the Steelers than the Bills, because I think people were writing off the Steelers, but this was the Steelers, showing that, hey, this defense is still really freaking good. I mean, they can still do some stuff. And I mean, the Bills beat the Steelers last year 17-10. So for the Bills, it wasn't much different from, I mean, I don't know, I can't remember exactly how that game played out, but it wasn't much different from the way that, they played against them last year. So I think the Bills are probably close to the same team. I think that, they might have been expecting a lot more from themselves going into this game. I think they will recover. I still think they are one of the teams to beat in the AFC and certainly in the AFC East. But, I mean, I think this says a lot about the Steelers and that, we shouldn't overlook them because a lot of people started to, but there's a reason they're one of the most, successful franchises in the NFL. And my next takeaway comes from one of the least successful franchises in the NFL, the franchise that has not won a season opener since 2004, the Browns. But it's positive because I think Baker Mayfield looked really good. I think he's ready to kind of vault into that. I'm not saying he's going to. He's not a top 5 guy, but I think he can get.
I got him on my honorable mention for quarterback, so I'm right there.
I think he can get into that top 10 of he's able to do enough to win games. I mean, because honestly, if their punter doesn't drop that snap and totally screw up that punt, that game looks a lot different because that was a huge momentum swing and gives them, an immediate touchdown. But, I mean, Baker Mayfield, just look at what he did. He threw for 321 yards on a 75 completion percentage and didn't have Odell. He was throwing to Anthony Schwartz, a rookie from Auburn. He was throwing – Jarvis Landry looked good. He was making throws to Njoku and Hooper and a lot of guys. I mean, just watching him play, he looked ready. He looked ready to go up against the Chiefs and battle them. And so, he looked poised. He was running around in the pocket really well, escaping things, making good decisions. That interception came on just trying to force something at the end of the game when they needed it. obviously wants that back. But, the thing about Baker is I think he's an incredible leader. Has the potential to be one of the best leaders in the NFL as he matures, if he's not already now. And when he's got Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt behind him, he doesn't have to carry the entire load. I think he is good enough to, get into that conversation. I think he's going to get a large extension, not Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson type money, but he's going to get a lot of money, and deservedly so, because he looks ready to be one of the, top 10, 12 quarterbacks in the NFL.
I've kind of ran the gauntlet with Baker Mayfield in terms of, when he first started out, his maturity level, his confidence level, to now where he is right now. Like I said, I had him an honorable mention for a top 5 quarterback, meaning, he is not Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Russell Wilson, Patrick Mahomes level, right? Josh Allen level, but his maturity's gone a long way. I'm really excited to see it. I'll kind of rapid fire through my takeaways here, but Seahawks offense could potentially be very dangerous. Okay, so I'll keep this relatively brief because I know Cody and I can talk about this for an hour. But the Seahawks offense looked pretty great against a Colts defense that's not really any slouch, really. They're kind of a top half defense in the league, I would say. And on the road, Seahawks do very well on the East Coast for the most part. It's kind of crazy because they have to put their best foot forward in the NFC West, really. But against a Colts defense, we all knew Russell Wilson was going to come out throwing bombs, and he was going to have a great game. This reminds me a lot of last year, where he had 5 passing touchdowns in week 1 against Atlanta, and people are like, "Oh wow!" Me included, was like, "Oh wow, he's coming for the touchdown record." No quarterback's done this or done that. He had 4 passing touchdowns this weekend, which I just did not match that 5 touchdown mark, but gets a touchdown to Gerald Everett, gets 2 touchdowns to Tyler Lockett, a beautiful 69-yard bomb to Tyler Lockett. That pass was incredible to watch, and 1 to DK Metcalf. The thing that gets me about the Seahawks offense is Tyler Lockett will have a fantastic first half where he has over 100 yards receiving and he's got 2 touchdowns. And then DK Metcalf will barely see the ball. And people are like, "Oh, we better double up on Tyler Lockett." Well, then 6'4", 230-pound DK Metcalf, freak athlete, will come in over the top and get passes and get receptions himself. So this offense was already going to be great with Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf there. But with a new passing coordinator from the Rams, and Gerald Everett came into town as the new premier tight end for the Seahawks, and he got a touchdown as well. There's nothing I love seeing more than Russell Wilson bootlegs to get receivers open, because there's not many receivers that can do it, or there's not many quarterbacks that can do it quite like he can. If everybody on this team stays healthy, it looks like Rashad Penny might miss some time. But if Chris Carson's, fingers crossed, stays healthy, Gerald Everett stays healthy, Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, and of course Russell Wilson with an improved offensive line, watch out for the Seahawks offense. It might be pretty dangerous to stop. Is all I'm saying.
Yeah, I would change that to just the Seahawks could be dangerous, because I liked what I saw from the defensive line, generating pressure on a Colts offensive line that is not necessarily one of the best anymore. I believe they lost a left tackle and such. But
I don't think Quentin Nelson was playing per se. He may have been, but
yeah, I can't remember. I just know he was probably, if he was playing, not healthy. But the fact that they're getting pressure against that type of Colts offensive line means that there's something there. So I'm going to get into my 4th as we get through these last couple really quickly. It's just that, Tennessee did not look great for a team that had won that division, and is in a division that's very winnable again. Just didn't look good. Derrick Henry had 58 rushing yards. Julio Jones had 29 receiving yards. A.J. Brown had 49 receiving yards. Do you want to take a guess as to who the Titans' leading receiver was?
Well, I checked it yesterday, but I'll double check it here, and it's not who I would be expecting. I thought it'd be Julio or A.J. Brown, but it's not.
It's Chester Rogers.
Yeah.
Chester Rogers. It's just, obviously they lost Arthur Smith, who's now the head coach for the Falcons and doesn't look great there. But the fact that they just look that bad against a Cardinals team that is good, but the defense isn't anything incredible. or maybe it is. Who knows? We'll certainly get to that. But the Titans should have came out and done a lot better. They play the Seahawks next week, and they could, really get into a bad hole. 0-2. It just, you think the one constant is Derrick Henry is going to be able to run all over whoever he plays, and he certainly may get back to that, but it's not looking great for them right now.
No, it really isn't, and it just goes to show how much a name can absolutely take over fans' perceptions of teams, because apparently one addition on that offense, Julio Jones, made them the best offense in the league, or whatever they wanted to say.
It can always still turn around. They certainly got a lot of talent.
For sure.
It's not looking good right now.
It is just week one at the end of the day, of course. Now, my final takeaway here, piggybacking off of the Seahawks take I had previously, this NFC West division, I don't know, is ever going to regress with the rate that it's been improving over the past decade. The NFC West just continues to be the best division in football, no ifs, ands, or buts. I mean, the AFC North is great and all with the Browns and Ravens, but are we really going to throw the Bengals in there as a potential playoff team? Are we really going to throw the Steelers in there as a potential division winner?
I don't know. NFC West. Steelers looked good.
The NFC West, there are 3 teams in this division that could easily win, and every single team in the division could easily be a wild card. I am including the Cardinals in this conversation. The Cardinals had a tremendous game against Tennessee, where Kyler Murray looked right now, the MVP race is extremely early to tell.
The MVP race doesn't start for 3 weeks.
I'm just saying the MVP race starts whenever people want it to start in terms of the NFL. When you have a game like Jameis Winston got 5 passing touchdowns, does that mean he's going to be? Obviously not, but people are going to want to.
He had like less than 200 passing yards.
He had like less than 150, I think. Yeah. So, I mean, the NFC West is going to be possible. Yeah. I'm not going to throw out any blasphemous predictions about the NFC West right now, but the Cardinals could be a playoff team, could probably be a playoff team. The Rams, Niners, and Seahawks, there's no debate about that. They're all playoff teams. They're all division winners. Could this be the first division with now 3 wildcard teams entering into playoffs? Could this be the first division where the entire division is in the playoffs? It could happen. I'd be honestly pretty mad if it happened, because the Seahawks would have to play the teams they already have to play 2 times a year anyways, again in the playoffs. And if there's any time that the Seahawks are in the playoffs, they do not want to play a team from their division. But the Rams looked great. The Niners looked great. The Cardinals looked awesome. The Seahawks looked great. This whole entire division has proven to be the best division in football.
Did the Niners look great? Because they barely covered against the Lions, only won by 8 and nearly gave that game up. They still looked good in a lot of areas, but the fact that they let the Lions get back into it, obviously it took an onside kick bouncing off George Kittle's face mask to let that happen. But, I'm just saying, they got to prove a little bit more than beating the Lions by 8. But certainly this division is stacked from top to bottom, and any of these teams in any of the other divisions would be contending as well. I feel bad for the Cardinals as most likely the 4th best team in that division, but still probably a really good team. I'm going to go quickly on my final takeaway. Wanted to give some recognition to a team that probably is going to slip through the cracks and not get talked about. But Denver, I think they could be sneaky good. Speaking of how good the NFC West is, I think the AFC West might be the next best division, just in terms of depth. They don't have, the AFC North has the Bengals, which brings them down quite a bit. But the Chiefs, Chargers, Broncos, Raiders could all be really solid, other than the Chiefs being very good. But the Broncos, they could sneak into the playoffs. The defense looks back to what it was. Von Miller getting some sacks could be solid, and then Teddy Bridgewater looks solid enough to win 9 games. Maybe not much else. Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams both look pretty good. Gordon at 101 yards. Obviously, the 70-yard touchdown was a lot of that. And then Sutton, Judy, who unfortunately got injured, looks like a high ankle sprain. But Sutton, Judy, Fant, Tim Patrick, KJ Hamler, they look like they've got a solid group of weapons. And that, I think they can put it together to be good enough. I'm not expecting anything huge from them, but they could be all right, I guess is how I'll cap it off.
Well, the defense isn't really the question mark with the Broncos, right? I mean, the defense will always be considered in I would put them in kind of the top 10 range, to be honest with you. It's really the offense that has had a question mark for in the post-Peyton Manning era. But Teddy, of course, looked great. And I will say my prediction, I don't know how many months back of saying Teddy Bridgewater was going to start week 1, did come through. I know Broncos fans have a love-hate with Drew Lock, but Teddy is a better option. I think anybody could tell you that. So they had a great offensive showing against a Giants team that is really in kind of a interesting situation. Are they in a rebuild? Are they in a buying phase? Are they in this? Are they in that? It's really just kind of Daniel Jones perform or get out.
It's certainly
he didn't play pitifully.
Well, the turnovers are always going to be there for him.
He had one fumble that he lost, but he got a passing touchdown and rushing touchdown. But Saquon, was non-existent. Granted, he's coming off an injury, but Saquon's non-existent.
Yeah, Denver's going to have to be tested against a much better team than the Giants, but it's looking not too bad for them right now. I want to move into some player recognition. We're going to do some 3 stars, picking 3 people, I'll say 3 people to kind of recognize for this this past week. We'll start with our third guy. Ryan, I'll let you take it off with your 3-star guy.
So starting at number 3, this was my hot take of the weekend. It went through, and after the Seahawks game finished, after the Bills game finished, I literally turned on the Bengals game for the first time in my life, I tell you what. But the Bengals played the Vikings at home. Everybody thought this was going to be a chalked up victory for a Vikings team that has plenty of stars on their roster. But I said the Bengals were going to shock the world. And more importantly, I said the connection between Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase was going to be what wins them this game. And to be kind of honest, it is kind of what won him the game, considering that Jamar Chase himself did lead the team in receiving yards, had an absolute field day against this Vikings defense that no one was really expecting. I mean, 100-yard game for a rookie receiver on a team that has, stacks of pudding for an offensive line. Had a beautiful touchdown that was very reminiscent of the LSU days with him and Joe Burrow catching passes. I mean, this was my hot take of the weekend. Sure, Joe Mixon had over 100 yards rushing, but Joe Burrow, I'm not saying he's going to be, the holy grail in Cincinnati, but no turnovers, connected with his former teammate plenty of times, won this game in overtime. I mean, I'm sure Joe Burrow had a little bit of PTSD of this week 1 matchup going into overtime. He's like, I better not get hit with another tie. You know what I mean?
These were both teams. These were both teams that were trying to tie, if not lose it. I mean, I would argue back and say Joe Mixon probably the best player for the Bengals in that game, and obviously the Dalvin Cook fumble is probably what won it for them. But Jamar Chase kind of getting over those drop issues that had a lot of people freaking out was huge for them. I'm gonna go with a coach for my my 3rd star, and I'm sure you looked at this, but if I asked you.
I know I recognized his name. But
I was going to say, if I asked you a week ago who the Philadelphia Eagles coach was, would you have been able to tell me?
I would have been able to tell you who the Philadelphia Eagles coach was, but if you would have showed me Nick Sirianni's name, I would have been like, "Oh, that's the Philadelphia Eagles coach." But
because honestly, I mean, kind of in the same boat until I really got into it. I knew they didn't have Doug Peterson, but Nick Sirianni was an interesting hire. Never been even a play caller before, and I don't think that this means the Eagles are great. I don't even think this means Nick Sirianni is great, but the fact that he went out there and won his first game in dominating fashion, says a lot. The Eagles fan base can be incredibly volatile, and if he got his ass kicked in week 1, they would probably be calling for his head already. So I just like the fact that he went out there, did what he had to do. I think there's going to be a few losses coming his way at some point, but he looked good. He outplayed, or outcoached Arthur Smith, who was one of the big names on the coaching carousel. So I mean, he certainly started out his head coaching career in probably the best way possible.
He made Jalen Hurts look like a fantastic quarterback out there. He made the whole team look complete. I mean,
we'll see if
Devontae Smith had a touchdown as well in his debut.
I mean, maybe it was the Atlanta defense that made them look good. We'll have to wait and see, but certainly they looked good.
But he made the team look really well.
Yeah,
really good. I mean, picture like a retail store cleaning up when the district manager comes in. That's basically what this kind of looked like. It was like, we're a pretty good football team, but then when they play Washington, yikes.
Yeah.
They play them twice. So, going off of you saying Nick Sirianni, I have my second star here that I can definitely back up, but I'm going to kind of go for a twofer on this one because my second star is Jared Goff. And although it wasn't a losing effort against the Niners, who was expecting the Lions to make that valiant of a comeback? I mean, I think it was like 38-10 at some point.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous. I mean, I was checking the score on my phone, wasn't watching the game per se, but I was seeing the score just get worse and worse for the Lions. I'm like, oh, there we go. There's the Motor City. But, man, did they almost come back and win this game. And it really did come down to the final drive. I mean, I give the Lions a ton of credit. I gave Jared Goff credit for a 300-plus yard game with 3 touchdowns, yes, the 1 interception. But I'll give Dan Campbell the credit as well. I think Dan Campbell is probably the brightest bit of this Lions team.
Yeah.
Other than maybe like Penei Sewell, which is kind of sad.
TJ
Hawkinson as well. But like, I put 3 guys over Jared Goff in terms of the most exciting aspect. I put 4 guys over Jared Goff if we're going to throw in that corner from Ohio State. Forget his name.
I think he just went on IR, Jeff Okudah, so he's probably out for
All right, so Jared Goff, you just took over Jeff Okudah. But this Lions team, man, I mean, this is a Niners team that went to the Super Bowl within 5 years ago. Okay, and the Lions almost had a valiant comeback at home.
Was that 3 years ago? Yeah, 3 years ago.
Yeah, so I mean, this was a great comeback effort, and
2 years ago.
I'm sure Dan Campbell went back into the locker room and was like, I can't believe we lost this game. We're supposed to bite off their kneecaps or whatever he said in his intro press conference. I'm sure he came in with a lot of energy, but this is a valiant effort by the Lions, and I really have to applaud them for that because the Lions and the Eagles, I think, shocked a lot of people, and the Lions didn't even get the win, and they're still shocking people. So
yeah, I mean, in terms of a team taking on a head coach's identity, I don't know if you see it better any more than this. The Lions just look scrappy, and I don't know what to make of this, but Jared Goff, the 300 yards, his receivers got 12 yards, 50 yards, 19 yards, 23 yards, and 14 yards. Those are his wide receivers. I mean, TJ Hawkinson, obviously 97, and then both the running backs look really good. I think that is probably the biggest thing from there. DeAndre Swift looked really good after it came out that he wasn't even going to get the bulk of the workload, and then Jamal Williams looked good. But yeah, I mean, Jared Goff, probably still not the answer for the future there, but certainly looking pretty solid right now. I'm going to go to a guy that Jared Goff played a lot against, Russell Wilson, who you talked about already. So I'm going to keep it very brief, and then you can move on to your guy. But I just think the command of the offense looked really good. I don't think Russell Wilson is the Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, just drop back and gunsling type of guy. I don't think, the let Russ cook, yes, was something, but I just don't think that's the type of player he is. I think this offense is perfect for him. Get a lot of play action, get a lot of, boots, whether it's the short thing or the intermediate comeback to Tyler Lockett tiptoeing on the sideline, and then chuck it deep when you've got it, but don't force it. I just love what he did. I mean, he had, let me see, what was that? 5 incompletions, 4 touchdowns. He had a 152.3 passer rating, second highest of his career. And something that I tweeted out yesterday, I think Russell Wilson is going to threaten for one of, if not both, of the QBR and quarterback rating records this year. I think he is such an intelligent quarterback, and getting him in an offense like this, you saw similar things with Matt Stafford, only 6 incompletions. You get a quarterback of that caliber into this type of offense, and it's a lot of open receivers. He's not forcing things anymore, especially if he's not going to be under pressure all the time. So I just think Russell Wilson showed that he wanted Shane Waldron, he wanted to run this offense, and I think the offense is going to look really good. But there's certainly a quarterback or two that outplayed him. I know you've got him as your number one guy.
I do have him as my number one guy. I just want to also say Russell Wilson passed for 250 yards and managed to get the offense to have 100 yards of rushing as well, which for any Seahawks fan acknowledging that's kind of a rarity.
Yeah,
now,
I mean, the balance is still going to be there, and just the fact that he's going to be able to do that with those opportunities he has, and I think it looks good.
But number one, in terms of all the games, except for one that has played, I mean, who can really say Kyler Murray didn't go out there and play his heart out? I mean, he came out guns blazing from the get-go. He had some fantastic throws against a Tennessee defense that's not necessarily the greatest in the world. But Kyler Murray, I mean, he hasn't regressed by any means. He just plays for a team that, it can't just be Kyler Murray and D-Hop every single time, unfortunately. But Kyler Murray comes out with, 4 passing touchdowns and a rushing touchdown as well. 5 total scores associated with Kyler Murray's name. And guess what? Those 4 passing touchdowns just didn't go to D-Hop. They went to all different kinds of receivers. Sure, D-Hop got 2 of them, but
I think Christian Kirk got the other 2.
And okay. Well, Christian Kirk got the other 2, but 5 total touchdowns just shows he cannot be stopped. I mean, he could very well be stopped, but in terms, I compare him with Lamar Jackson in terms of saying Kyler Murray's a better thrower, Lamar Jackson's a better runner. Kyler Murray showed he can do both, and he can do them pretty damn well. Yeah.
Well, I think Lamar's a different type of runner. Kyler Murray is the run around, make defenders look stupid because they just can't get him. I mean,
oh my gosh, that one play he had on 3rd and 10 where he's just running around in circles, and then he gets the first.
Yeah, he's not juking and spinning people out like Lamar is, but just his burst and his acceleration, and I don't know, he's so short, he has tiny little legs running around. He looks so fast. He just is incredibly elusive. And yeah, I mean, just he looked great, and it's really impressive to see him do that. And what a lot of people don't remember is, we remember kind of the Cardinals stink and the way the season ended. He let people down, but he had a shoulder injury in week 11. And before that, he was looking like one of the best quarterbacks in the league. So if he stays healthy all year, they upgraded the line as well with Rodney Hudson at center. I mean, he could be that type of guy. I mean, he's the guy I picked as kind of a long shot MVP guy, so looking really good. But I don't even think he was the best player on his own team yesterday, and that's because Chandler Jones was the best player in the whole NFL. I mean, 5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles. This is a guy who said, oh yeah, remember me? I'm really good. The last time I played a full season, I got 19 sacks, and I'm back at it again. I mean, he's only 18 times has somebody got 5 sacks, and I believe Derek Thomas is on there twice. So the fact that so it's 5 sacks, that's a lot. That is not something that, because I mean 7 obviously is a record. That's a lot. 6 happens, every 20-something years or whatever. But 5 is also very impressive. 2 forced fumbles as well, including one that got the Cardinals to the half-yard line, so almost a defensive score. And just the fact that he's emblematic of that Cardinals defense shutting down the Titans, like I mentioned. Chandler Jones, J.J. Watt was the big talk. They got him in there, but Chandler Jones is the defensive player of the year candidate on that defense.
I said it when we were ranking edge rushers in this league. I mean, Khalil Mack, I think we all kind of agree, is still a premier edge rusher in this league, but Chandler Jones has to go down as one of the most underappreciated defenders in the NFL. I mean, he has not had a down season by any means. I mean, I picture
last year with some injuries was
right. But in terms of like when he's out there playing,
no. When he's playing and he's healthy,
you can't stop the guy. I mean, I put Chandler Jones on the defensive side of the ball, in the same realm that I put Matt Stafford on the offensive side of the ball. They've been underappreciated their entire careers. They've always put up great numbers. They haven't been on the best of teams. And Chandler Jones, I mean, what he did, he was on that Super Bowl 49 team with the Patriots, I believe, and he's gotten even better in Arizona. And that's just rare.
Cardinals.
Yeah. But it's absolutely insane to see him get 5 sacks. I mean, I remember seeing that headline later in the day, and I was like, 5?
Yeah, that's to do it in the first week of the season too.
He's already 25% of the way to beating his season high.
It's really insane. And so we're going to move on very quickly as before we wrap up into a brief Monday Night Football preview. Obviously, a lot has changed since we talked about this game last week. But, I mean, the Ravens are favored by 3.5. This is the first game in Allegiant Stadium with fans, first regular season game for the Raiders. But I'm expecting a Ravens win here. I don't know about you.
Well, the Ravens went through injury Armageddon, really, last week with numerous people going down, and I'm sure they had Lamar Jackson wrapped up in bubble wrap in his last practice with the team. But this is the first game in Allegiant Stadium. The new Las Vegas Raiders will have an actual home game with fans there in attendance. And that stadium looks like an absolute Death Star. I don't know if you've seen it in person, but yeah, it kind of does look a little bit like a Roomba, but it just looks intimidating. It's just a massive, massive stadium. But I mean, I look at this game, and although Ravens, you've gone through a ton of injuries. Gus Edwards goes down. Lamar Jackson has, some weapons at receiver, but it's going to be the Lamar Jackson show, and the Ravens will still pick up the slack on defense. I mean, what are the Raiders really improving? You know what I mean? I mean, Henry Ruggs is kind of their number one option outside of Darren Waller.
Unique Ngakoue.
I'm talking about the offensive side.
Offense?
Kenyon Drake. I mean, Josh Jacobs and Kenyon Drake, you can almost put them close to the same level at this point.
John Brown and Zay Jones. I mean, Nathan Peterman looked great with those weapons in the preseason.
Nathan Peterman looking great with anybody is definitely a pro. But all of these people that they got in the offseason, the Ravens still going through a ton of injuries. I would expect a closer game than I think people are leading on. I don't think this is going to be a blowout by any means. I mean, who knows how loud this stadium's going to get with Raiders fans in attendance. The Ravens having to travel, 2,000 miles to get to this game, to play a Raiders team that has had somewhat of an underrated offseason. I did forget about some of those additions, especially in Ngakoue. But Lamar Jackson, I mean, he's seen all these other players have great games. He's seen Kyler Murray had a great game, Matt Stafford, Russell Wilson, Chandler Jones even. Ravens are going to take it. They'll take it it'll be pretty close, though, I think. Closer than more people will realize. I'm going to go 24-21, I think, with really my score prediction. I'm going to give the Raiders a little bit of credit because I think John Gruden will be in the game, but the Ravens will inch away with it. Yeah,
I think, the talent of the Ravens is just going to win out. I think the Raiders have a chance to do some damage maybe this year, maybe sneak in as a third wild card team. They were close last year, almost made a push. So they certainly, can do that. Derek Carr, we're going to see what he has this year. But, I just think the Ravens are too talented. Yeah, they've lost a lot of guys to injuries. But, I mean, Tyson Williams is going to come in and be like, I'm an undrafted rookie. So what? I'm the running back on the Ravens. I'm going to get some, good plays because you've got to worry about Lamar Jackson. But, as much as everybody's clamoring for Le'Veon Bell and Latavius Murray and Devonta Freeman and fantasy trying to get that Ravens running back that's going to go off. At this point, I just think it's just better for Lamar. They're just going to run it with Lamar more. Tyson Williams, like I said, is going to be good, but Lamar's just going to, he might break his own rushing record. I just think that it's going to lead more to him doing his thing. He's going to want to show that, 2 years ago wasn't a fluke, and that last year was more like it. Was more like the fluke. And I think Sammy Watkins, Marquise Brown, Mark Andrews, he's got weapons and nothing insane, but he doesn't need to throw for 400 yards like Dak Prescott in order for this Ravens team to win. And then the defense lost a lot of pieces. Marcus Peters just went down, but they still got a lot of talent. John Harbaugh is an incredible coach. They're gonna still be good, and I think they'll probably win this by a touchdown.
What's your score prediction? I got 24-21.
I don't know. Let's go. I think 20. I don't know. I want to say 20. I don't want to say 24 again, but I would go 28-20 or something like that. I think they'll win by a score.
28-20. Okay.
And I think 28 points might be a lot for that Ravens team.
Sure. Really, I think the outlying deal with the Ravens is the Browns just lost a tough game against the Chiefs. Do you really want to be on the same level as the Browns, or do you want to get the head start? Because if you lose the game, you're going to be behind the Bengals. You're going to be behind the Steelers. Yeah. Do you want to be on the same level of them, same level as them, and above the Browns? The Browns are really the team that they are competing week in, week out with, even when they're not playing against them. So they're going to come out and play their hearts out, and the Raiders, they recognize, Chiefs and the Chargers won. We got to be up there as well. It's going to be really close, really scrappy.
And the Broncos.
And the Broncos did, yeah. So even more so for the Raiders are going to come out. But this Ravens team, just talent-wise, personnel-wise, even coaching-wise, sorry, Gruden, but it's going to be the Ravens, 24-21.
I think John Harbaugh is too good of a coach to lose a game with to a team with inferior talent. Like Matt LaFleur for the Packers, I'm not as confident as a coach, But John Harbaugh is on, Pete Carroll, Sean Payton, that type of level, and I think that might be the big difference here. But that certainly will be an entertaining game. I'm excited to see Allegiant Stadium with fans within that type of atmosphere. Yeah, it's going to be really cool. Certainly the Las Vegas Raiders are ready to finally play in front of some hometown fans. But that's going to do it for us. We will be back with you on Thursday to preview the week 2 of the NFL season, starting with the Washington football team and New York Giants on Thursday. That is certainly a step down from last week's matchup. But we will be with you on Thursday. So make sure to tune into that, as well as the other Dash Sports properties, as they're talking about some Pac-12 college football, which Pac-12 college football is one of the most interesting topics every year because of just the nature of that conference. So follow Dash Sports on socials and on YouTube and stay in the loop on what we've got going on. See you in a few days.